In this video, we will talk about the context of the letter to the Hebrews. Let's begin by talking about the authorship and dating of Hebrews. Hebrews is often attributed to Paul the Apostle. This attribution begins by the end of the 2nd century CE, but Paul's name never actually appears on the text of Hebrews. This claim is based on the ideas that we see throughout the text of Hebrews. But even by the end of the 2nd century, various Christian church historians and thinkers were arguing about whether Paul wrote the letter or not, looking at stylistic differences between Paul's epistles and the text that we see in Hebrews. Nearly all modern biblical scholars claim that this text was not actually written by Paul. There's some suggestions as to who might have written the text, including Apollos, one of Paul's co-workers who helped found the Corinthian and Ephesian church, Luke, who may have been the author of the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts, as well as Priscilla, one of Paul's other co-workers who was married to Aquila and helped found the church in Ephesus. In short, while these suggestions may have some merit, we do not know who actually wrote this text. We do know that this text was probably written between the years 60 and 90 CE. Again, since we do not have any specifics about authorship and specifics about what was going on at this time, we do not have a specific date. Some argue that the letter was written before the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, because Hebrews focuses quite a bit on Jewish liturgy, which would have been performed in the temple. However, we also must look at some of the situations that we see in here, and many scholars believe that the text was not actually written before the destruction of the temple, but that there was simply a focus on Jewish liturgy after the destruction. We do know that the text was written before the mid-90s, when Clement of Alexandria wrote his First Clement text and quoted Hebrews in that text. We also know that the text was written after the earliest Christian generation lived and performed teachings and miracles and so on, because the text references these things. Thinking about the audience and intent of the letter to the Hebrews, we first want to think about this title that we've given the book. When you hear letter to the Hebrews, you probably first assume that this text is a letter, and second, assume that it is written to Jews, or at least Jewish Christians. While this text does have a very heavy Jewish focus on remembering the past of the Hebrew Bible, there's also an inclusion of Gentiles who are mentioned and written to in this text as well. We also want to look at the structure of the text and recognize that it's not actually a letter or epistle, but instead functions as a sermon. This again makes it even more difficult for us to date when the text was written. When we look at the text of Hebrews, we notice that we do not have some of the typical greetings, closings, or addressing audiences like we've seen in the other epistles of the New Testament. Instead, the text opens up saying, "Long ago, God spoke to our ancestors in many and various ways by the prophets." The text reads very much like a sermon, ending with, "Grace be with you all." There's a focus rather on a group of people who are listening to some kind of speech, rather than to a specific person or group of people being written to with instructions or greetings. We also must remember again that this text is written to both Jews and Gentiles within whatever church or organization or community this sermon was given to. We do know that the audience to whom this was delivered was facing persecution based on two of the intentions of the author of the text. The first was a call to faithfulness. The author is calling these persecuted Jewish and Gentile Christians to be faithful in the face of persecution, and also to encourage them in the face of persecution for hope for the future. Now that we have reached the end of this video, you should be able to explain the authorship, composition date, audience, and authorial intent of Hebrews, describe the historical setting and context of the Hebrews, and identify the structure of Hebrews and give examples of how it is seen in the text.